Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into the key lessons from Morgan Housel's bestseller, The Psychology of Money. I'm Harish Kumar, and I'll be sharing insights from this influential book. We'll explore some of the most important ideas that can change how we think about money and wealth. So, let's get started and see what valuable lessons await us in this presentation. Before we dive into this book, let's take a moment to look at the story of two American millionaires. My favorite Wikipedia entry starts by describing Ronald James Reed as an American philanthropist, investor, janitor, and gas station attendant. Ronald Reed was born in rural Vermont and was the first in his family to graduate high school, which is impressive considering he hitchhiked to campus every day. For those who knew him, there wasn't much else to say. His life was pretty low-key. He fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years. He bought a modest two-bedroom house for just $12,000 at age 38 and lived there his whole life. He was widowed at 50 and never remarried. A friend recalled that his main hobby was chopping firewood. Ronald Reed passed away in 2014 at age 92, and that's when this humble rural janitor made headlines worldwide. In 2014, over 2.8 million Americans died, but fewer than 4,000 of them had a net worth exceeding $8 million. Ronald Reed was one of those rare few. In his will, he left $2 million to his stepkids and over $6 million to his local hospital and library. People who knew him were baffled. Where did he get all that money? It turns out there was no secret source, no lottery win, no inheritance. Ronald Reed saved what little he could, invested in blue-chip stocks, and patiently waited. Decades later, those tiny savings grew into more than $8 million through the power of compounding. And that's the story. He went from janitor to philanthropist. Now, a few months before Ronald Reed died, another story made headlines, this time about Richard Fuscone. Richard Fuscone was everything Ronald Reed was not. He was Harvard-educated, a Merrill Lynch executive with an MBA, and retired in his 40s to focus on philanthropy. He was highly praised by leaders like Merrill's former CEO and featured in Crane's 40 Under 40 list. But, as often happens, everything fell apart. In the mid-2000s, Fuscone borrowed heavily to expand his massive Greenwich home, over 18,000 square feet, with 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, and 7 garages, costing more than $90,000 a month to maintain. Then, in 2008, the financial crisis hit. His high debt and illiquid assets left him bankrupt. He told a bankruptcy judge he had no income. His Palm Beach house was foreclosed first, and in 2014, his Greenwich mansion was sold at auction for 75% less than its insured value. 5 months before Ronald Reed left his fortune to charity, Fuscone's home was lost to foreclosure. The key difference: Ronald Reed was patient, whereas Fuscone was greedy. That's all it took to overshadow the vast education and experience gap between them. The main lesson here isn't necessarily to be more like Ronald, though that's not bad advice. It's about understanding why these two stories can exist side by side. One explanation is luck. Financial outcomes can be heavily influenced by chance, regardless of intelligence or effort. But I believe a more common reason is that financial success isn't a hard science. It's a soft skill. How you behave, how you manage your emotions and actions during financial decisions is often more important than what you know. The choices and emotions during those moments shape your financial destiny more than raw knowledge ever will. All right, let's take a moment to go over this important disclaimer. First off, I want to emphasize that all the examples we've discussed throughout this session are meant solely for reference and educational purposes. I'm not promoting any specific companies or products here. It's really crucial that you do your own detailed research or consult with a financial advisor before making any decisions. Remember, investing and financial choices are personal and complex, so professional guidance can help you navigate them safely. This disclaimer is there to remind us all to be cautious and responsible with the information shared. People do some crazy things with money, but the key idea here is that no one is truly crazy. What might seem irrational to one person can make perfect sense to another, because our money behaviors are deeply rooted in personal history. People from different generations, backgrounds, and economic environments learn very different lessons about money. For example, someone who grew up in poverty might see risk and reward differently than a child of a wealthy family. Their experiences shape their financial outlook in ways that are hard for others to fully understand. Experience, in fact, outweighs theory. You can model historical data all you want, but it doesn't capture the emotional reality of a financial crisis. Until someone has lived through a financial downturn and felt its impact firsthand, they might not fully grasp what it truly means and how to respond. Early life conditions are powerful. Research from 𝐻𝐻𝐿 and 𝐘𝐸𝐻𝐿 shows that the experiences we have in our formative years anchor our lifetime risk-taking behavior. Growing up during high inflation, for instance, tends to make someone less inclined to invest in bonds later on. Or if you experienced a strong stock market when you were young, you might be more inclined to invest heavily in stocks, even if your intelligence or education doesn't suggest that's the rational choice. Every financial decision we make fits into our individual mental models. At that moment, the choice makes sense based on the information, biases, and personal story we have. Even if others see it as irrational, for us, it's logical because it aligns with our understanding of how the world works. Take lottery spending as an example. Many lower-income households spend disproportionately on lottery tickets, not just because of expected value, but because it's a tangible way to dream big when upward mobility feels limited. Even if the odds are terrible, emotionally, buying that ticket is a way to hold onto a hope, a dream of a better life. It's a rational act within the constraints they face, even if it doesn't make financial sense in the traditional way. So remember, no one is crazy. People's behaviors reflect their personal stories, their experiences, and their mental models. These shape the choices they make, sometimes in ways that seem completely illogical to others. Luck and risk are siblings. They are both the realities that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. In 1960, only the Lakeside School had computer facilities, and that school could only accommodate 300 students. Meanwhile, there were around 303 million high school students worldwide, so only 1 in a million had the chance to be at Lakeside. Bill Gates attended one of the few high schools in the world with a computer. When he was 13 in 1968, he met his classmate Paul Allen. Both of them shared a deep obsession with the school's computer, and they quickly became friends. Back then, there were about 303 million high school-aged people globally, with roughly 18 million in the United States, 270,000 in Washington state, and just over 100,000 in the Seattle area. Out of all those students, only about 300 attended Lakeside, an extraordinarily tiny fraction. So, starting from 303 million high school students, the odds of being at Lakeside with the resources to buy a computer were 1 in a million. And Bill Gates happened to be one of those fortunate few. Gates is clear about what this meant for him. He said, "If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft." Gates is incredibly smart and hardworking, but he also had this 1 in a million head start by being at Lakeside. Now I want to tell you about Gates' friend Kent Evans. He experienced a different kind of luck, what we might call risk. Gates and Paul Allen became household names thanks to Microsoft's success, but there was a third member of their high school group, Kent Evans. Gates describes Kent as the best student in their class, and they became best friends in 8th grade. They spent hours talking on the phone. "I still know Kent's number," he says. Evans was just as talented with computers as Gates and Allen. Lakeside once faced the challenge of manually creating the school's complex class schedule, an enormous task. The school assigned Bill and Kent to build a program to solve it, and they succeeded. Unlike Paul Allen, Kent shared Gates' business mind and endless ambition. Gates recalls Kent always having a big briefcase, like a lawyer. and they were constantly dreaming about what they'd do in 5 or 6 years, whether they'd be CEOs, generals, or ambassadors. Gates reflects that he and Kent would have likely continued working together and probably gone to college together. Kent could have been a founding partner of Microsoft, but tragically, he died in a mountaineering accident before graduation. This story reminds us that luck and risk are both part of every outcome. They're so intertwined that you can't believe in one without respecting the other. The world is too complex, there are too many moving parts, and sometimes, outside forces beyond our control have a greater impact than our own actions. Both luck and risk are hard to measure and even harder to accept. That's why they often go unnoticed. For every Bill Gates, there's a Kent Evans, equally talented and driven but facing a different fate. When you truly respect luck and risk, you realize that success, whether your own or others, is never as straightforward as it seems. It's a mix of effort, chance, and circumstance, woven together in ways we often don't see. When I look at Warren Buffett's current net worth of $84.5 billion, it's striking to see that the vast majority of that, $2 billion, was accumulated after his 50th birthday. Even more remarkable, $81.5 billion came after he qualified for Social Security, in his mid-60s. So, while Buffett is an incredible investor, I think it's important not to overlook a key point. His success isn't just about investing skill. It's largely about the longevity of his investing career, over 3/4 of a century. Imagine if Buffett had started investing seriously in his 30s and retired in his 60s. Few would have ever heard of him. Let's do a little thought experiment. Buffett started investing with real seriousness at age 10. By age 30, he had a net worth of about $1 million, adjusted for inflation. That's roughly $9.3 million. Now, suppose he was a more typical person, spending his teens and 20s exploring and finding his passion, and by age 30, his net worth was just $25,000. If he still managed to earn his extraordinary 22% annual returns, but then retired at 60 to play golf and spend time with his grandkids, what would his net worth be today? Not $84.5 billion, that's for sure. It would be around $11.9 million. That's a 99.9% drop from his actual net worth. What this really shows us is that Buffett's financial success is largely built on the foundation he created early in life and the length of time he's been able to compound that wealth. His skill is investing, but his secret weapon is time. That's how compound interest works. Over many years, it can turn small beginnings into enormous sums. Now, let's think about this in another way. Buffett is the richest investor of all time, but when you compare his average annual returns, about 22%, he's not necessarily the greatest investor in terms of pure raw returns. Jim Simons, from Renaissance Technologies, has compounded money at a staggering 66% annually since 1988. That's an incredible record. No one comes close. And yet, Buffett's net worth, as I'm speaking now, is about $140 billion, while Simons is around $21 billion. You might find that surprising. How can Buffett be so much richer if Simons has better returns? The answer is timing. Simons only started seriously investing in his 50s, so he's had less than half the years of compounding compared to Buffett. This really highlights an important point. It's not just about how good you are at investing, but how long you're able to stay in the game. Buffett's longevity and early start have been crucial. It's an incredible illustration of the power of time and compounding in building wealth. The hard part isn't math, it's patience. You see, compounding only works if we don't interrupt it. It's about allowing those gains to grow over time without interference. Now, let's look at this staggering number. 63 quintillion, 900 quadrillion, 781 trillion, 780 billion, 748 million, $160,000. It's an almost unfathomable amount of money. To put it into perspective, if James Simons had earned his remarkable 66% annual returns over a 70-year span, the same period Buffett has built his wealth, he would be worth, please hold your breath, an amount far beyond our imagination. This really highlights the power of patience and consistent, long-term growth. It's the core message that ties everything together. Patience is the true key to unlocking exponential wealth through compounding. Let's talk about Rajat Gupta, one of the first Indian business leaders to really make it big on the global stage, long before Indra Nooyi or Sundar Pichai did. He was born in Kolkata and faced incredible hardship early on, losing his parents as a teenager. You could say some people start life on third base, but Gupta couldn't even see the baseball stadium. Yet, what he achieved from those beginnings was truly phenomenal. By his mid-40s, Gupta was the CEO of McKinsey, the world's most prestigious consulting firm. He retired in 2007 to take on roles with the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, even partnering with Bill Gates on philanthropic work. He sat on the boards of 5 public companies. From the slums of Kolkata to the heights of global business, that's quite a journey. With his success came enormous wealth. By 2008, Gupta was reportedly worth around $100 million. That's an unfathomable sum for most people. To put it in perspective, a 5% annual return on that amount could generate nearly $600 an hour, every hour of the day. And yet, Gupta wanted more. He was not content with just being a millionaire. He wanted to be a billionaire, and he wanted it badly. Sitting on the board of Goldman Sachs, he was surrounded by some of the wealthiest investors in the world. One investor even pointed out that Gupta seemed eager to join that billion-dollar circle. So he looked for a side hustle. In 2008, during the financial crisis, Warren Buffett was planning to invest $5 billion into Goldman Sachs to help it survive. Gupta, as a Goldman board member, learned about this before it was public. That information was incredibly valuable. Goldman's survival was uncertain, and Buffett's backing would have sent the stock soaring. 16 seconds after hearing about the deal, Gupta hung up the phone and called Raj Rajaratnam, a hedge fund manager. Now, that call wasn't recorded, but Rajaratnam bought 175,000 shares of Goldman Sachs immediately afterward. The Buffett-Goldman deal was announced hours later, and Goldman's stock skyrocketed. Rajaratnam made a quick $1 million. This was just one example of a pattern. The SEC claimed Gupta's insider tips led to $17 million in profits. It was easy money, too easy, in fact. Both Gupta and Rajaratnam ended up in prison for insider trading, ruining their careers and reputations forever. And that brings us to a vital point. Reputation is invaluable. So are freedom, independence, family, friends, and genuine love. These things are priceless. The best way to protect them is to recognize when it's time to stop taking risks that could threaten what truly matters, to know when you have enough. The good news is, the most powerful tool for building enough isn't complicated. It doesn't require risking everything or jeopardizing these priceless things. That's what the next chapter will explore. Housel's core message is to align your money with your values and your sense of autonomy. One of the biggest psychological traps is the idea of never enough. The desire for more money, more power, more status can push us to take excessive risks, even when we've already achieved a lot. Remember, as Housel says, the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Knowing when you have enough is crucial. It's about understanding that true wealth isn't just the number in your bank account, but the freedom and peace that come with knowing you've reached a sustainable, fulfilling point. Let's dive into the key lesson here. Getting wealthy is one thing, but staying wealthy requires a different mindset and strategy. Maintaining an emergency or contingency fund in safe instruments like fixed deposits is crucial. It acts as a financial buffer, helping you avoid the trap of having to sell investments at a loss during tough times. When markets crash, such as during the COVID period, many people might have panicked and sold their assets. But those who stayed invested, thanks to their contingency funds, were able to benefit from the enormous recovery that followed in stocks and real estate. Preventing yourself from making desperate, ill-timed sales can significantly boost your lifetime returns. It's more about patience and resilience than trying to pick the next big winner every time. Now, let's talk about the importance of insurance. Protecting your family's future with term insurance means that if something happens to the breadwinner, their income can be replaced. This ensures your dependents can still cover essentials like housing, education, and daily expenses. Health insurance is equally vital because it shields you from high medical bills that can drain your savings or derail your financial goals. It also helps keep your long-term investments intact by preventing forced sales when unexpected health issues arise. Plus, knowing that your major risks are covered reduces stress, letting you focus on your work and life decisions without constant worry. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, tails matter. Sometimes, forcing a sale during a downturn might seem like a loss, but it can actually lead to huge gains later. What Housel calls tails, you win. Think of Walt Disney's story. Despite early failures and bankruptcies, his resilience and willingness to survive shocks paved the way for his success. The key is to prepare rather than predict, diversify your investments, and stay resilient through shocks. It's also important to distinguish between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is having a high income, like driving a luxury car or living in a big house. These are visible signs and often come with high expenses. Wealth, on the other hand, is hidden. It's the income you don't spend, the options you keep open for future opportunities. It's about building a buffer, a financial flexibility that can grow over time. Think of it like exercise and diet. Losing weight is tough because even after working out, many overestimate what they've burned and then eat more. Wealth is like turning down that tempting treat. It's about self-control, patience, and making small, consistent decisions that compound over time. The gap between what you could do and what you choose to do is what builds wealth. And yes, tails matter again. As Housel advises, prepare rather than predict, diversify, leave room for surprises, and focus on resilience. That way, even if you're wrong half the time, you can still come out ahead. An emergency fund prevents forced selling, keeping you invested so your money can grow through compounding. Finally, protect your savings today and your future goals with term and health insurances. Always review policies thoroughly and avoid falling into mis-selling traps. Trusted advisors and portals like Ditto Insurance and Policy Bazaar can help, but always read the fine print. Good investing isn't about making perfect decisions all the time. It's about not screwing up consistently. That's how you build and, more importantly, stay wealthy. So, if wealth is essentially what you don't spend, then what good is it if it just sits there? Well, let's explore how the author convinces us to focus on saving money. First, it's important to distinguish between being rich and building true wealth. Wealth gives you the financial freedom to follow your dreams and passions without constant worry. Chasing that extra percentage point of return, trying to squeeze out a tiny bit more, while neglecting to save is often the wrong focus. Because at the end of the day, you can save just for saving's sake, and that's actually a smart move. It's great to save for specific goals, whether it's a car, a down payment on a house, medical emergencies, or maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Remember, wealth is what you don't see. It's the money you've saved and invested, not the possessions that money can buy. So overall, the key point here is that saving isn't just about accumulating money. It's about creating the freedom and security that come with building real wealth. Let's talk about the importance of a sustainable environment. When we say sustainable, we're referring to practices that meet our current needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs. This means being mindful of how our actions impact the planet, from reducing waste to conserving natural resources. A sustainable environment is crucial because it supports not just human life, but all living ecosystems. Healthy forests, clean water, and clean air are fundamental, and they also directly influence our economy and health. Throughout this presentation, we've seen how integrating sustainability into business practices isn't just good ethics, it's good for long-term success. By adopting eco-friendly strategies, companies can reduce costs, improve brand reputation, and contribute positively to the world. So, fostering a sustainable environment is a shared responsibility. It requires awareness, innovation, and commitment from all of us, whether we're individuals, communities, or organizations. Ultimately, Creating a sustainable environment helps ensure a healthier, more resilient planet for generations to come. Thank you for being with me through this journey. And to wrap up, I want to leave you with a quote by Napoleon that really encapsulates the core message of this presentation. He said, "A genius is the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind." What does that mean? It's about the power of staying calm, focused, and consistent, even in chaotic situations. It highlights the importance of maintaining composure and clarity when others may be panicking or losing sight of what truly matters. This kind of steadiness, this ability to do the average, or what might seem simple, is often what separates successful individuals from the rest. It ties into our overall theme: resilience, focus, and the strength to keep moving forward, no matter the circumstances. So, thank you for your time and attention. I hope these ideas inspire you to stay centered and confident, no matter what's happening around you.